Alright everybody, we're back. This is part 2 of making an armature. So we were last time we started making a 35mm size armature for a male. Female is pretty similar, and you basically do everything we did in part 1. The only major difference is going to be in the shoulder width. So like I said though, this is going to be a male figure. So first thing we have to do now that the putty is cured is we want to make sure that the shoulders are sitting at about 10mm up from the hips. Somewhere between 9 and 10. 10 at the most, but more than 9. So we're a little bit above 9, but not as much as I'd like. So that's all right though. There's actually one other thing I want to show you first. If for some reason you put too much putty on this join here from last time, you can take your an X-Acto blade or a scalpel and you can just trim a little bit off at the arms, and that will just allow us to manipulate shoulders a little more and not kind of be trapped into making our figure wider than we mean to. Okay, so there we go, trimmed it just a little bit. So as I said, we want it to be about 10mm up from the hips, and to do that, if it wasn't set at that height from the very beginning, we just kind of bend it up a little bit. We angle the arm up. Here, I'll show you again on this one. We angle it up, and you can do this straight up or just a slight angle, and then we bend it back down. And you can see now that it's sitting higher. You've kind of got this L shape forming right there. Check it real quick with our ruler. All right, that's much better. Okay, so for the shoulder width, I like to make my characters a little more of heroic proportions. So I like to have the males with about 4mm. And the way we measure this, you can measure it directly from the center of so basically the center line in the spine, or you can, if you want a little longer, you can measure from this wire here, which will probably make it more like 4.5. So that's typically what I do. I measure from the edge of the wire. You can just adjust this as necessary. And sometimes if I want them to be even more heroic, I'll actually push it a little farther than that. Whoops. So this, unlike the legs and some of the other things where I said, you know, eyeball the other side, you measure one and then eyeball the other. This time I check them both. This is not a measurement that's easy to do, as easy to do with eyeballing, since you don't have the two lengths right next to each other. So, all right. That'll probably give us an overall length of about 9. Yep. Okay. If you end up finding that this is a little too wide, you can always pinch it down a little bit. And this is after you've puttied up your figure. You can actually go back and shorten it and rebend stuff. So I made it a little shorter, so now he's probably going to be closer to 8 now. Okay. All right, for arm length, that we are going to do 10mm from the shoulder. So we measure, put it right there, wait until the end. And now this is just from the shoulder to the wrist. And I just like to do one bend out. You can do it out, you can do it forward. I just do some angle like that to just so that it's very obvious where the wrist is beginning and the hand will start. The reason I do it this way is a lot of times, you know, if a guy's holding a gun or something, I can bend this wire around like this, so it's like his hand's like this. So we just do that to both sides. Okay. Then this is similar to the legs. I don't measure where the elbows are. I just kind of spot it about halfway. And I usually, again, try and make this a little longer than the forearm. But that doesn't always happen. Sometimes it does. The reason, though, is sometimes this can be a little short, especially if you have a guy holding a rifle or something. The arms might be a little short depending on how your weapons are, and it's very easy to elongate this part of the arm rather than have to go back and change the elbow, then change the wrist, change the hand, so on and so forth. Okay, so now we've got that. If you want, you can leave the arms bent like this, or you can, if you want the arms to be more straight, you can do a similar thing to what we did here. You're not trying to roll it specifically, but you just kind of bend it back straight, but make sure you leave the bend of the elbow. So now your arm is essentially straight, but you can still see that bend. All right. Now is where we start to set the correct overall height. Remember, I said a long time ago that we were making this section longer, and that was because of a couple things. One, I like to put a little bit of a curve in the spine just to give a little more natural feel to the armature, and I like to leave extra at the very top here so we can make like a little loop, and that just helps hold the putty on the head and gives it a little more bulk right from the beginning, since that is a bit of a bulked up spot. So now, before we measure the overall, I just go ahead. This is totally optional. Your figure will look good even if you don't put these bends, but for me, it helps just kind of accentuate certain curves and weight of the body, the stances that you take. So I start by grabbing around the waist here, and I tip the torso forward, just kind of like that, like he's bending over. But then I like to roll him back just a little bit here, and this is another part that would be a little bit different on the female, whereas with the male we're just doing it slightly just to give a little bit more of an arch to his back. The female, I like to accentuate it far more, which sometimes means that you need to actually make this section even longer if you want to do that, just to have the hips set farther back and whatnot. Okay, so now we've got that. It's just a very slight bend. It's not a big deal, but it just kind of sets the legs in a more natural position to manage the weight of the body. Now we get our ruler and we measure from the bottom of his feet to the top, and you can see that we are at about 36 millimeters. So if you want more in the head, you can make this even longer, this portion even longer. But for now, we're just going to do a slight bend around, shave off about a millimeter, maybe a little more. It's okay to take a little more off because you can always add more putty to fill in the spot for the head. You just need to have a good amount of wire for that to hook onto. So you can leave it as a little hook like this, or you can go ahead and bend it all the way down like that. And then similar to this waist here, now that we've kind of bent him back like that, we want to tip it forward just a little bit, and then I like to bend this part back a bit more, and then you can see he's got kind of a nice little natural stance going on there. Lastly, I still have these snips out because, as you can see, he's got a lot of extra wire here, extra wire here. Now this, leave the extra wire. If you have to trim it for some reason, because it's too long for your sculpting mount, you can trim that off when the time comes, but you always want to leave as much on as you can because it helps it stay in place while you're sculpting. On this part, if there's not going to be a weapon or anything, you can basically cut that in half and you'll still have plenty of wire for hands, and but they're not getting in the way as much. All right, I'll be right back to show you a few more things. One last thing I forgot to mention for the feet. There's two ways to go about this. You can either leave a slight bend in here like this and bend these straight down so that you can put this straight into a piece of cork, which is a good mounting element, or I make these wooden vices that I like to use when I sculpt, because you can easily remove and put the figure back on, not have to worry about them degrade like the cork can. Or you can basically create a miniature foot, and this is similar to how we make the hips. You just take your small pliers, pinch as close to the bend as possible, and bend the wire down. And again, I like to hold it in place and push the wire down by hand, because if you put it out here and then bend, twist, you will undo this bend right here. So this is good. I like, because it suggests the direction that the foot needs to go. The only downside to this, you need to be careful, is that if you're going to tab this model with a base tab, you typically use this wire to mount it into the tab itself. And if it's too far forward, so say the foot only comes out 1 more millimeter, the tab would be mounted like on the front of his foot. And it's much better to have it more center in the foot or right under the heel. All right, now I'm gonna just show you how I would go about posing up an armature. I'm not gonna talk during this. I'm gonna speed it up so it goes a little quicker. Just say a couple things before I start. Whenever you're bending, it's good to have you want to have an idea of what you want to go for first. I would suggest looking at an image of what you want, or posing yourself, actually getting into the stance to get a feel of how it would be, and or doing some sketches, because if you can sit here and figure out the pose on the figure itself, but the more you bend this, the weaker the joints will get. And if you go back and forth, you know, it can take some punishment, but eventually it will break. So get an idea what you're gonna go for, and then go for it. All right, here we go. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that time lapse. I just realized that I filmed it sideways, so that's super cool. And until I get some new software, I am not entirely sure how to fix that. But bear with me, and I will make sure to double check that next time. But anyways, so yeah, here's the figure. It's a person kind of like leaning back, nonchalantly holding the pistol up, get ready to fire it off. So yeah, you guys might get to see me sculpt on this armature in the near future. We'll see, but it was fun. All right, if you have any questions, feel free to post in the comments. I'll do my best to answer them, and feel free to make suggestions on future sculpting tutorials. I have several in mind, but I'm always glad to hear what people want to see and try to accommodate it. All right, till next time.